we have seen the postulates of quantum mechanics and you have gotten into details of lot of mathematics. Before you get bored, let me show you one of the problems where quantum computing gives you an advantage. This should serve as a motivation to read more about quantum computing. Let me start. This problem is called Deutsch's problem, and this is a very simple, I would say, a very made up problem where quantum computing shows its advantage. You might wonder, why are you talking about this problem? What is the practical relevance? The only reason why we are studying this problem is to show you that there exist instances where quantum computing can perform better than a classical computer. And that is why it was given in 1980s. Let's see. The problem is very, very simple. You are given an oracle of this function. What does it mean you are given an oracle? We don't know what the function is, but you can always ask what is the value at a bit b. You have a bit which is from 0, 1. This black box or this oracle can give you the value of f on this bit. Unfortunately, every time you query this function with this bit, you are charged. It is expensive to query the value of the function. Your task is to find whether f0 is equal to f1 or not. There is a value f0, there is a value f1. There are not many functions from 0, 1 to 0, 1. The only thing you want to figure out is whether f0 is equal to f1. The problem is that you want to use minimum number of queries to this oracle, because asking this question any query is very expensive. This is Deutsch's problem. You are given a function on a bit whose output is a bit. You want to find out whether f0 is equal to f1 or not. Let's talk about this problem classically. Pause the video and think how many queries you would take. It is quite clear that you can't do this problem, you can't solve this problem without querying both f0 as well as f1. Just knowing one of the bit is not good enough to compute the value, compute the question. The question is, we don't want to compute the function, we just want to find out whether f0 is equal to f1 or not. This distinction should be clear to you. We have been talking about functions, computing functions. In this case, we don't want to compute the function. We are given a function as a black box. We just want to find out whether f0 is equal to f1 or not. The task has to be accomplished by querying this oracle or this black box as few number of times as possible. Classically, you have to do it twice. You have to first ask what is the value at 0, what is the value at 1, and then compare them. There is no other way to do it. Magically, we can do it with just one query in quantum computing. That's clearly an advantage. Let's see how to solve this problem using just one query in a quantum computing model, which you are now very familiar with. I will once again remind you, what do we need from quantum mechanics? We just need three fundamental postulates. State space, what is the working space? You know now, it's a Hilbert space, or for us, it's just c to the power n, where n is the dimension. And then you know about superposition. The state can be written as alpha 0 plus beta 1, where alpha and beta are amplitudes. Second question, transformations. What operations can we apply? You again know the answer. You can apply unitary operations. Third part, measurement. You picked some states, you applied some transformations. How do you find out what is the output? Remember, there is only a certain way in which you can get the output. For example, if your final state is alpha 0 plus beta 1, there is no way to figure out what is alpha and what is beta. We just know that if we measure it in the standard basis, then we will get 0 with probability alpha square and we get 1 with probability beta square. Given these constraints, how can we solve Deutsch's problem in just one query. Remember state space, 1 qubit, alpha and beta are called amplitudes. They are complex numbers. It's a unit vector. And we looked at fourth postulate also, which had this kind of the state space. Transformations, you have unitary matrices. You preserve the length of the vector. That is why utilities are important. If there is 1 qubit, then your transformations would be 2 by 2 unitary matrices. We have seen examples of that, poly X, poly Y, poly Z. Another important gate was the Hadamard gate, which was something which from state 0 gave you the state plus, from state 1 it gave you the state minus. For lack of my mathematical skills in PowerPoint, I have not written 1 by root 2 factor, but you would remember that since our states have to be normalized, there is a 1 by root 2 factor here and there is a 1 by root 2 factor here. You know what plus state is and you know what minus state is. If there are 2 qubits, then your operations would be 4 by 4 unitary matrices. I'm just reminding you all this and hope that you remember all these concepts clearly. Measurement, for us, it was just enough to know projection onto the subspace. There are generalized measurements, but for us, it will be enough to remember I can project onto a subspace. The simplest example was, if we measure alpha 0 plus beta 1 in the standard basis, I will get I will get 0 with probability alpha square and I will get 1 with probability beta square. We have mentioned this enough number of times that probability are a consequence. This I will again reiterate, and you will actually see this by the end of this algorithm, that this state does not mean that my state is in 0 with probability alpha square and 1 with probability beta square. That's a very, very different model, and if you represent it quantumly, that would be a very different state. Knowing all this, can we solve Deutsch's problem now? Do you remember what was the problem? We were given a black box of the function which had two values. Either I could get f0 or f1, and I wanted to figure out whether f0 was equal to f1. You can also think of it as there is a black box. If I give the input 0, it will give me a bit b0. If I give the input 1, it will give me the bit b1. And I wanted to find out whether b0 was equal to b1 or not. Given this oracle, we wanted to figure out whether f0 was equal to f1 or not. Classically, it took us at least 2 queries. And you see clearly that with 2 queries, I can solve this problem. Can I do better in the world of quantum computing? That's the question. But wait, let me ask a simpler question. What do you mean by oracle in the quantum computing world? You would say, oh, why not the same? I have a bit on f, it will give me f of b. In other words, if I have the quantum state b, then my output should be ket of f. But remember postulate 2, we said that all our operations have to be unitary. In other words, quantum computing is reversible. But this is clearly not reversible. If I take b, operate f and apply fb, this cannot be a unitary operation. This is not reversible. That means this oracle is not allowed. The correct oracle would look something like this. It has to have two inputs, b, and a workspace register w, and then the value of the function is computed in the second bit or second qubit by XORing with w. Notice that this definition, I am assuming b, w, XOR fb all to be in the basis states. So this gate is giving the description only for basis states. You can try giving values 1, 0, 0, 1 and so on, and this oracle will give you the value of fb. For example, if I want the value of f0, I will give b equal to 0 and w equal to 0. Then I will get 0 XOR f of 0, which will be f of 0. So clearly I can compute f0 and f1. Your question might be, but this oracle might be stronger. This might, there, all the magic might lie here. You might be computing something very, very strong. Your strength lies in this, having this oracle and not really in quantum computing. At this point, you have to trust me on this. There is a universal construction when we simulate any classical circuit into quantum circuit. It computes the function like this. So just by existence of quantum computing, if I take a classical circuit and simulate it quantumly, this is what I will get, and hence it's the correct oracle. This will be clearer with future lectures. At this point, just believe that this is the correct oracle. Given the bit and the workspace, my function gets computed like this. This is the universal construction. Let's once again clarify the oracle. Given the bit b, if I keep the value 0, then I get fb. This is how the oracle works. How can it help us? We will use the property of superposition to get through this Deutsch algorithm, to do the task of finding out whether f0 is not equal to f1 or equal to f1 in one query. Let's see how we use this superposition. Suppose instead of b, instead of giving a basis state, I give the state 0 plus 1. By linearity, the second qubit will output, the state which I will output will look like this. Notice that I have drawn just one wire, but these are 2 qubits. This is a 2 qubit state, 0 f0 plus 1 f1. At a very cursory look, it might seem like I have got both the values f0 and f1 and I can figure out whether f0 is equal to f1 or not. But remember, when things are superposition, does not mean that I know what f0 is, I know what f1 is. I can only get the information from measurement. So this is not cheating. If I measure now, I will either get f0 or f1. I will not get any advantage over classical thing if I just measure here. So just being able to query or doing this thing in parallel does not mean I have the power of quantum computing. Though definitely I can query this state 0 plus 1, and this is my answer. Again, I am missing out normalization factors which you can always put in 1 by root 2, 1 by root 2 here, so that this becomes a unit vector. That's one thing. We know that we can create this state, but that is definitely not enough. Our task is to find out whether f0 is equal to f1 or not. This simultaneous computation is the start, but this is not enough. Remember, we called plus state to be 0 plus 1, minus to be 0 minus 1, and we can do this simultaneous computation. Still have no idea how to solve whether f0 is equal to f1 or not, because measuring this will only give us either f0 or f1. The important thing to do now is the phase trick, which actually computes this function in the phase. Take this as a small exercise and see that if my state is minus, then this is how the output will come. Given the state b, the final state here would be minus 1 to the f of b minus. This you can verify easily, and it will also convince you that you understand what this oracle is doing. So instead of computing the function value last time as a state, I am computing this as a phase. How can this help? The idea would be to merge these two tricks. The phase trick, when I compute the function in the phase, and other thing is when I give the be as plus 0 plus 1, I can get both the function values simultaneously present in my state. Let's mix those. Once I merge the two, you will see that this is the state which I will get. The plus state will transform into minus 1 to the f0, 0, plus minus 1 to the f1, 1. Minus will remain like minus. All these calculations are not difficult. They are given in the notes. You can try them yourself. If not convinced, you can look at the notes. I'm only trying to give you the intuition. One was we can simultaneously compute. Second was that this computation I can put it in phase. Why was putting the computation in phase important? My claim is we are done. You might ask how? The simple answer is Hadamard gate. You remember what Hadamard gate did? It took 0 to 0 plus 1 and it took 1 to 0 minus 1. In other words, if f0 was equal to f1, then this state will be a plus state with a phase, with a global phase, which we don't care about. So either it will be minus 1 times plus state or it will be a plus state. In either way, we will say that's the same state. There is only a global phase. If f0 is not equal to f1, then there will be a relative phase of minus 1. Hence, you will get a minus state. So, the output of our computation now depends on whether f0 is equal to f1 or f0 is not equal to f1. If f0 is equal to f1, we have a plus state. If f0 is not equal to f1, then we get a minus state. I can just measure now in plus minus basis. If I get plus, that means f0 was equal to f1. If I get minus, then I get f0 not equal to f1. If you are uncomfortable measuring in plus minus basis, I can just apply Hadamard. If you remember, inverse of Hadamard is Hadamard. So plus will go to 0 state and minus will go to 1 state. If f0 is equal to f1, we will get 0 in the end. If f0 is not equal to f1, then I will get minus in the end. This shows that we can just do one query. We queried f only once with 0 plus 1 state and we could get the answer. Sounds magical. What happened physically? Let me first tell you intuitively and then describe it using a picture. The final Hadamard gate collects the amplitude on the 0 state. This is the property of the Hadamard gate. If you think of it, Hadamard gate is on the 0 on the 0 state, it will get alpha plus beta. If my state is alpha 0 plus beta 1 and if I Hadamard, I will get alpha plus beta divided by some normalization factor as the amplitude of my 0 state. So, in other words, the final Hadamard gate or any Hadamard gate collects the amplitudes to the 0 state. If I have to put it mathematically, given the state we constructed, if we apply the Hadamard gate, the amplitude of 0 would be this. It is just adding up all the amplitudes. Amplitude of 0 state, amplitude of 1 state. And this is very clear. If f0 is equal to f1, then these two will have the same sign and this amplitude will become high for 0. And this is why we get a 0 state. If f0 is not equal to f1, then these signs will mismatch, the amplitude will become 0 and all the amplitude will be concentrated on the 1 state. Remember, we are talking about the amplitude of ket 0 here. So the amplitude of ket 0 gets constructively interfered if these two are in phase, if they are of the same value. This amplitude gets destructive interference if these are not in phase, when f0 is not equal to f1. This is what phase trick allows us to do. It puts these two amplitudes in phase or out of phase depending on the values of f0 or f1. Notice this cancellation can never happen with probability. Probabilities can't cancel each other, they will only add up, and hence this fundamental thing which has happened here, constructive and destructive interference, cannot happen with probability. This is the intuition of Deutsch's algorithm. And again, I welcome you to go to the notes and convince yourself that this happens. But let me give you a picture proof which will help you understand why we came up with this algorithm or how we thought of this algorithm. Though the intuition is motivated by physics, and I'm not a physicist, so take it with a pinch of salt. Whatever errors are there, they are because I'm not a physicist. Let's talk about what happened. Okay, I had a state, I had some wave going on. When I applied the first Hadamard, remember I created the state 0 plus 1 by root 2. That would be done by applying a Hadamard to the first qubit. That will transfer it into 0 plus 1 by root 2. From 0 to 0 plus 1. What happened? In some sense, I split my amplitude into two parts. Some amplitude on 0, some amplitude on 1. Now I apply this oracle. If f0 is not equal to f1, then these things will go out of phase. The amplitude of 0 and amplitude of 1 will go out of phase. We will take the other side also, but let's stick with this. When f0 is not equal to f1, these two waves are out of phase now. The amplitudes of 0, amplitude of 1. And then when I apply Hadamard, it applies a destructive interference here because these two waves are out of phase and I get no amplitude. So this is talking about amplitude of final amplitude on get 0. On the other hand, this would be slightly different if f0 was equal to f1. Again, as the first step, the wave gets split into two, 0 plus 1 by root 2. When I apply f0 equal to f1, apply this oracle, there is no phase shift. These two things remain the same. And then the final Hadamard gate makes this amplitude much higher. The reason simply is because these things are in phase as compared to this case when they were out of phase. And you got the amplitude 0. This is the reason why Deutsch's algorithm works. I would like to emphasize that we could only do this because of the phase trick. It's not just that since we are computing two things in parallel, that's why we could do it. Just by asking your question on 0 plus 1 by root 2, you will compute f0 and f1. Or I shouldn't say you will compute f0 and f1, your f0 and f1 will be there as part of the state, but there is no way to figure out these values. Actually, even after the end of this algorithm, you cannot figure out both the values, f0 as well as f1. This is not the same as parallel computation. In parallel computation, you will get both the values f0 as well as f1. There are laws which prohibit you to figure out the value of both f0 as well as f1 just by doing one query. That's the important part. I will leave you with this cartoon which emphasizes what I wanted to say. And I hope you understand that there is something else going on. It is not just that we are doing two things in parallel. That's why we are able to compute the value. That's definitely not the reason why quantum computing is